Huh. I didn't know Cami Leach played lacrosse. Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Our world is changing. Change inspires the greatest moments in history and the most barbaric as well. Change is everything to a society, except one thing. Change is never obsolete. Hello everyone. My name is Chase Clements, and today we will be looking at 5 moments in history that have affected modern lifestyle. I will be covering the following topics: the Cold War, the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, counterculture, and Richard Nixon. Along with discussing these topics, I will touch upon the American ideals. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Due to conflicting political ideologies, the United States and the Soviet Union did not get along. The United States followed capitalism and democracy as their main source of economic and government stability. On the other hand, the USSR believed in communism and totalitarianism, which centralized around the idea of complete equality. America was staunchly against communism, and the USSR was against capitalism, so nuclear threats naturally ensued. This led to major international crises, such as the Berlin Wall and the space race. This war of threats continued until 1991. In modern society, we still fear nuclear catastrophe, most recently with North Korea and Middle Eastern countries. The result of the Cold War has also formed many great U.S. friendships amongst other countries, such as England and France. Hopefully, our world will get past nuclear threats and live in harmony. The Civil Rights Movement was a defining moment in increasing minority equality. The movement sparked with Rosa Parks' courageous action of sitting in the white-only section of a bus. From there, the movement began to grow. Organizations such as the NAACP and SCLC promoted nonviolent protests and civil disobedience to end segregation. These organizations also taught blacks how to properly take a literacy test for voting. 2 largely influential civil rights leaders, MLK and Malcolm X, inspired black people to take action against segregation. The movement was successful, ending facility segregation and allowing blacks to vote. Today, minorities and women continue to fight for equality. The Women's March, which was a protest led by feminists, advocated for the end of sexual injustices, such as sexual assault and the gender wage gap. And the Black Lives Matter movement seeks to end police brutality. The counterculture during the 1960s and 70s was the first rebellion of differing generations. Traditionalists, who were normally the older generation at the time, held traditional values to a high regard, such as classical music, sex only after marriage, and attending college. The hippies, which consisted of the younger generation, had opposite views. They enjoyed premarital sex, drugs, rock and roll, and were anti-establishment. One of the biggest gatherings of hippies was Woodstock, a popular music festival back in 1969. Today, hippies have been substituted with hipsters, who are also against many traditional ideologies. You can find a hipster at your local Starbucks, sipping on his 4-cream, 4-sugar coffee, and typing his latest blog entry. But in all seriousness, the effect of the counterculture changed the way many Americans view traditions today. Not everyone is a white picket fence dreamer anymore. In 1964, the United States decided to enter Vietnam due to the rising threat of communism. LBJ was instructed to take any means necessary against the Viet Cong in order to protect democracy. American soldiers went into the war with high hopes of a quick victory, but that soon changed. Vietnamese geography and Viet Cong's guerrilla warfare tactic proved to be an annoyance to U.S. men. Not only this, but the search and destroy method of fighting was ineffective in this war. Back at home, the media was portraying the war in a different light, creating a credibility gap. Music was created by famous rock and roll bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones for the sole purpose of advocating against the war. The United States finally backed out of the war under Nixon's presidency. Nixon utilized Vietnamization, which trained Vietnamese soldiers how to fight the war for themselves, allowing the U.S. to nobly exit the war. The loss in Vietnam affects the way America handles foreign policy issues to this day. One positive aspect that came out of the war was the permanent change in the legal age to vote. However, Vietnam will forever loom in the darkest parts of American history. If it weren't for Nixon's lack of trust, he would have been one of America's greatest presidents. In a time of international separation, Nixon was able to amend our relationship with Communist China. He also briefly increased our bond with the USSR by selling them $750 million worth of grain. He wanted to increase relations with these countries in order to prevent nuclear war. Nixon also created OSHA and the EPA, which increased environmental protection and worker safety. The EPA implemented regulations that would shield our oceans, atmosphere, and air from harmful chemicals. Revenue sharing was implemented during Nixon's presidency, which gave more funds to state and local governments. Nixon definitely had done great things for the United States during his presidency, but it included some faults, such as the recession, leaked Pentagon Papers, and most importantly, Watergate. A group of burglars illegally entered the Watergate Hotel in order to spy on DNC officials. These burglars had an evident connection with Nixon's administration. Even with such overwhelming evidence against him, Nixon refused to admit to his wrongdoings for quite some time. This, plus 3 reasons for impeachment, forced his early exit. The biggest lesson our society has learned from Nixon has been this: vote for politicians who are honest with the American people. Personally, I plan on using this knowledge in upcoming elections, as I am close to turning 18. Although Watergate may have been the biggest takeaway from Nixon's presidency, he also left some great legacies. The EPA continues to secure the health of our environment. Because of Nixon's efforts, we still hold a strong relationship with China, and revenue sharing continues. Each moment of history I've discussed today deals with the American ideals. The Cold War dealt mostly with democracy and liberty, as communism threatened our democratic lifestyle and our personal freedoms. The Civil Rights Movement obviously involved equality, opportunity, and rights, as that was what minorities desired. Counterculture focused on liberty, as their rebellious actions showed freedom in a different light. Like the Cold War, the Vietnam War also focused on democracy and liberty for pretty much the same reasons. And Richard Nixon's presidency perfectly encompassed every American ideal, as he was a strong proponent of civil rights and democracy. It is a shame that his sneaky actions caused his downfall.